Good morning, everyone. Okay. Oh, Jeannie, hi. That's my neighbor. I'm hot mic.
Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning,
Good morning.
everyone.
Good morning.
It is so good to be here today and to be here today with Michelle as we are going to tackle the topic of perseverance in parenting in the school-aged years. Now, I can promise you, if you do not have school-aged children, this will likely still be applicable to you because as Michelle and I were preparing, we just kind of acknowledged that parenting never really ends, right? It's one of those journeys that we continue to make the whole life through, and then eventually it changes all over again, right?
That's right.
It's one of those things. So just a little bit about Michelle as we prepare to get started this morning. Michelle is the author, educator, and speaker who helps parents and often middle schoolers navigate the often awkward, always transformative years of adolescence. Her work has appeared in the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Today Show, CNN, and NPR, and she is the author of Middle School Makeover, 14 Talks by 14, and 8 Setbacks That Can Make a Child a Success. Her work focuses on helping parents shift from rescuing to guiding. I need a little bit of that. From fear to trust, and from control to connection. Michelle, thank you so much for being here this morning. We're glad you're here. So, if I'm honest, in my life, parenting can feel a little bit like a sprint.
Yes.
But really, it's a marathon, isn't it? It's a long journey. How can parents keep their eye on what we might want to call the long journey of love and not just get wrapped up into the anxious next thing that I gotta do?
The anxious next thing, that's me. I'm an anxious person, and so I can relate to that feeling. I think you have to have perspective. You have to remind yourself that even though what you're really focused on right now and worried about right now is minute, it might feel really big, but in the long run, what you're really parenting towards isn't a deadline of age 18. I think we get caught up in this idea that like I have to teach them everything. I have to, impart all the right values, make sure that they follow all the rules by the time they're 18 and they leave my house for whatever comes next. But what you're really parenting for is a relationship after 18. I think that is the goal. And to do that, you will have to sacrifice some of the minutia and sort of pull back to say, okay, is what I'm focusing on right now enhancing or straining my relationship? Because ultimately that's what you're left with after that sort of self-imposed deadline. So if you can focus on that instead of the little anxiety-inducing, what's the next thing I need to spin around?
So world around us really wants us to believe that that grades matter. Can we all acknowledge grades do matter? Yes, can I get an amen? Am I in the right place? Yes, or grades do matter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, to a degree.
Getting on the right sports team or travel team matters, right?
I'll say it matters to people.
It does matter to people, okay. Making sure that you're in the right friend group matters, right?
Yes.
Having a positive outlook sort of matters. But as parents and as communities of parents, at times we can just get stuck around this question of like, well, what really matters? How can we as a community be well differentiated from that sort of water that we're swimming in and really try to tend to the becoming of our children?
I think what matters is experience. I think that's what helps you grow and learn. Kids don't grow and learn from pep talks, from your stories about what you went through and what lessons you learned. They learn by trial and error, and error and error and error, and then they figure it out. And so if your focus on what matters is outcome, that's going to create some real struggle. But if your focus on what matters is experience, and it's not always going to be a pleasant experience, it's not always going to be fun, it's not always going to be perfect, then I think you have a much better path towards that better relationship, better connection down the road, because you're not thinking, okay, my kid needs to be on this team. My kid really wants to go to UNC, so I have to make sure that they have the best possible application for UNC. These are all outcome-based desires. It's not bad to want things, certainly, I want things, but also this is really about what the experience teaches your child about who they are. So maybe they don't have the grades to get into the college that they thought they would get into. What does that teach them about who they are? Something very valuable, and maybe then they say, okay, I'm disappointed. I have some regret that I didn't apply myself more. Now I'm gonna use that at this college that I'm gonna attend, and I'm gonna really knock it out of the park. So I think what matters, we need to shift from outcome to experience. What are they getting from this?
So what are some practices for us as individuals, as parents, and as a community that we could take up to help us ground ourselves in that sort of not exclusively outcome-based parenting?
Practices. So I would say calendaring is probably a big piece of this.
Yeah.
So one of the habits that most of us have when we're raising kids is scheduling things pretty intensely, right? Because we are afraid of missed opportunities. And people joke about kids having FOMO, but parents really have it. We are really have a fear of our kids missing out on an experience, an opportunity, a connection, a chance for something that they can brag about on their resume, whatever it might be. So I think one of the habits and practices in order to remain grounded is to pull back, take a deep breath, look at your schedule, and look at what you can cross off. I think that is, we have become robotic about filling our time, and I don't think it's healthy for kids or healthy for families. I think we need a lot more time to just sit around near each other. Somebody's doing a puzzle, somebody's playing on their phone, somebody's doing something else, cooking, but you're just in proximity, not racing around to the next thing. So I think that's a big one.
So really, and I'm being a little cheeky here, but really the goal is not to figure out how to fit it all in.
That's right. I don't want you to fit it all in. I'd rather you sacrifice some of these things in order to just have proximity. Proximity is how we develop our best relationships. And we need that with our kids. And a lot of times we don't have that with our kids because we're so busy meeting all of their needs. And we're sacrificing our own needs for it. You know, you're skipping your book club or your mahjong or your whatever because you think, I gotta get my kid into that pitching lesson and I gotta get my daughter into that dance class. And it's a lot of busyness at the expense of relationship.
All right, so anybody else feel, are we in the right room right now? Does this feels like we're in the right room, I think. It sounds like, I mean, this is maybe a stretch. It sounds like you're almost saying like, we care too much.
Oh, okay. Yes, and you're always gonna care. You're always gonna care. You're here because you care with an enduring intensity about your children that I love, that is necessary, and that you couldn't change if you wanted to, right? You should care so deeply about your children. I think the question is, what do you care about? Where are you putting that energy? And for me, I think your child's best chance at success is when that energy goes into relationship building with them and not with achievement-oriented outcomes. There's a study that, I think this study's 5 years old by now, but there's a woman named Ellen Galinsky, who's an author and a parenting person as well. And she polled kids who were like 8 to 18, what do you wish for your parents? And she asked the parents, what do you think is gonna be the most popular answer? And the parents said, I think they're gonna say, I wish my parents spent more time with me. and 2% answered that. The vast majority of kids said, I wish my parents were less stressed. And I really think that tells us everything we need to know about our relationships with our kids. We are bending over backwards to give them these experiences that we think are so valuable, and what they want is proximity. They just want you nearby.
Now, we can get proximate with our kids. We can be less busy, but our theme is about perseverance in parenting, right?
Yes.
And that doesn't mean that there aren't going to be hard things that show up in our lives, or hard things that show up in their lives, or just things that are totally out of our control. So you use a lot of metaphors for growth and resilience, and you talk about helping our kids develop a sense of groundedness in the midst of struggle. Okay, so I wonder if you can say a little bit in this sort of vein of perseverance and parenting and proximity about how we can respond to our kids when we face tough times, and what it looks like to have a posture of, again, the long game or of the long-term relationship, so that we can, we know going through hard things makes us better, but we don't ever like the experience of going through hard things, right? What are some ways that we can respond to our kids with grace and to help them make that journey?
I love this question, and I'm thinking about this in two ways. One is, of course, again, a metaphor. You're right, I love a metaphor. And so I was listening to an interview, it's probably been 10 years now, but it stuck with me, with the owner of the Knights, our baseball team. And he said, I want you to come to the games, and I want you to buy a beer and sit down and have a great conversation. And if you leave and you don't know who won, great. Like, that is not what this team is about. We are helping players become better players, right? We're feeding into the big leagues. And so that means sometimes we put players out there even though they're not quite ready. They've got to develop a skill, and there might be somebody better who we could put out there, and we might win the game if we put somebody else in. But what's important to us is building strength in these players so that they can go where they need to go next. And I think that pertains to parenting, and I think about it a lot. You're going to put your kid in a position, and you need to be okay with your kid being in a position where they mess up and where they're not quite ready and where they don't have the strengths yet, but they have to have the opportunity to build those strengths. So they need time out on the field, and they need to be allowed to miss some balls and to not perform very well. And for us to say, okay, you know what was important? You were out there and you were learning. That's amazing. So I think instead of, again, perseverance really comes back to not tying it to the outcome and saying, all right, this is about how did we get through today? What did you learn from this, and how are you going to grow from this? When you're talking with your kids, depending on your kid's age, you're not going to use these words, right? It's going to feel very teachy if you do. So I think instead our posture, that word that you used, our posture needs to be calm and thoughtful and often slightly disinterested. And that's hard, but the more interested you are in something, the more your kid, especially in the tween and teen years, is going to dig their heels in. And that's appropriate. They should. They're trying to figure out who they are apart from their parents. And so when you say, this is so important, they're like, I think I'm supposed to be thinking for myself right now. So they flip to the opposite, just instinctively, reflexively. I think a little bit of disinterest goes a long way in building connection and relationship.
I'm looking around, and there are some teens and tweens in the room right now, and so don't take our tactics, right? I mean, this is the deal. But the reality is, this is the conversation we have to keep. We're all learning, you know. We're all learning, and you know, people can say what they want about the old conversations about nature and nurture, right? The other side of the same coin of allowing our kids the grace and the space to get out there and to just try things is how many people in the room, one of your children just right out of the get-go was a perfectionist and it didn't matter what you did? Anybody? Okay, I'm seeing quite a few hands there, right? It's like, and so that sort of, there's that moment, there's the double side of that, right? Which is like, you want to give the experience, you want to let them out there, and it doesn't matter what you do or say, the inner voice of leveling up, right? Or of getting it right the first time is just always the voice that shows up first, right? How can we, because I won't say some of us also have kids who are the exact opposite, right? And they're willing to try, and it's not there. How can we show up in each of those different relationships with our children in ways that sort of honor the same sense of what you're talking about there?
My guess is that if you raised your hand about having the kid who was out of the gate a perfectionist, you would also raise your hand that you have the opposite kid. You have one of each. And a lot of times, I think the second child will be like, I see you've taken that territory. I will be right over here claiming this territory. And so that is a very common pattern, that they assert themselves, okay, well, I will be the fun one, right? Over here. So you really have to show up very differently for each kid. I think it's important to show up for each kid, no matter who they are, again, with a little bit of like, there's no judgment based on who they are in the world. And some kids are programmed that way, where it's like, I must do better, I have to achieve. And I do think that stems from, anxiety and a real drive, an inner drive, and those things can be so helpful. And of course, whatever is helpful can also be harmful. This is how tools work, right?
Yes.
If it's gonna be helpful, it's gonna be harmful. Every hammer, every stove, every car, like everything, including anxiety, can be that way. So I think you show up for those different kids as a matter of fact, not with any judgment, but just sort of as like, okay, I see, here's what I'm noticing. I'm noticing that this matters a lot to you. It sounds like this is very important to you. How can I be helpful here? How can I remind you that sometimes it's good to take a break? And so asking your kid what you can do for them instead of being too authoritarian and just saying like, enough. You have to quit, you have to stop. But how can I be of service here is a really great way. And then that other phrase, I'm noticing, is really good, because if you say it as a fact, you always get so worked up. Your kid can say, I do not. And then you have an argument. But your kid can't refute, I'm noticing. I'm noticing before these events that you ask a lot of questions. Is that because you're nervous or you're excited? Right? So you can notice things without starting an argument more easily than if you just state a fact.
I don't know about a lot of people here. That was not mirrored in the family that I grew up in, right? And so a lot of what you're talking about is also a relearning for a lot of us in the room. I'm seeing a lot of heads nodding right now. It's a relearning for a lot of us, right? What role do you think improv comedy could play in getting parents to be better at parenting?
I just did it. It's yes and. So I am a amateur student of comedy. I love comedy. I read memoirs of comedians and I watch stand-up and I study it. And this idea of yes and in improv, you know this all, I'm sure, but someone says, oh, hello, we're doing a skit. I'm an alien from outer space, and I'm also a dentist, and I'm here to fill your cavity. And if the person on stage with them says, no, you're not, I don't have any problems with my teeth, then that skit dies, right? So part of perseverance is being a yes and parent. So when your kid comes to you and they say, I'm really nervous about this test, if you say, no, you're not. You do fine on these tests, right? Or no, why would you be nervous? You've studied hard, and that's enough. I'm proud of you. You think what you're saying is really helpful, but what you're saying is, I'm not hearing how you feel. And how you feel is nervous. So you have to say, yes, you're nervous. And that tells me that this matters to you. How can I help? Yes, and.
Yes, and. All right, give another example of a yes and interaction. Let's try this one on. Several people texted me some questions.
Okay.
You ready? Okay.
I'm ready.
Give me a yes and conversation with a tween about getting a cell phone.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
or about screen time in general. So let's go cell phone first.
Okay, so let's say
I think the giggle tells me that was a good question.
there's an 11, let's say a 12-year-old 7th grader, and you've said, we're waiting, maybe you're doing the wait till 8th, maybe you're wait till 9th, whatever it is. I'm assuming this is the premise for the question. And the 7th grader says, everyone has one, I'm the only one who doesn't, and I'm being left out of conversations, so I need you to get me a cell phone. So there are a couple yes ands here. I think I would start with, yes, I know you feel that way. Yes, it's hard to feel left out. And let's say it's your family's rule that you're not getting a cell phone until 8th grade. And our rule is that we're going to wait until 8th grade. And I'm not condoning or not condoning that. I'm just saying I'm pretending that's your rule. Yes, and we're going to wait till 8th grade. So I know it's hard. How can I help you find ways to stay connected with people? Would it be helpful if we had people over to the house more often? Would it be helpful if I had better snacks? So when people came over, you had Doritos and Coke instead of my healthy, low-carb bars, right? I do think you have to make some concessions. This is the age of negotiation, and that is a good thing. And improv is about negotiating. Like, I have to say, part of what you're bringing to this skit is valid. If I just know my way through it, we're going nowhere. So I have to offer something and accept something that you're giving me too. I can accept that it is hard for you not to have a cell phone, and I can empathize with that, and I must give you something to make it a little bit easier if it's truly hard, and I do think it's truly hard. We might say, it's not a big deal. It's not, but it is a big deal to them. And you can still say it is a big deal to them and you still can't have it. And I would like to make it easier in some way that doesn't break this value, this rule, this boundary that we have. So what can I do? And there may be some things that you can do. You can drive places, you can have good snacks, you can allow people to stay up loud and late in your home. You could do things that create community for your child or help your child. Yeah.
It sounds to me like another thing that you're saying is that it's really important to be clear about your values. It's really clear to be about where the centered sort of boundaries are that you have in order to be able for parenting to be a kind of conversation, particularly in the school age years.
Yes, and. And it's okay sometimes to just say no. Like, so, you can be beat down by the same question over and over and over, and you don't always have to perform. Sometimes you can just say no. Like,
Amen? Can I get an amen in the room? Okay, yes, we
we've
understand.
had this conversation. The answer is the same, no. So, but initially, I think it's very helpful to be clear on why you're saying no. I think your child deserves to understand at least a time or two why you're saying no. And I think it's really helpful to know how to get to yes. So maybe it's simply a date on your calendar. We got to get to this point. I like for these kind of milestones to be based on behavior, not a date on the calendar. So I would say, you may have a cell phone when I see these things, when I see that you're able to safely navigate, the physical world around you. When I see that you understand etiquette and you're able to, handle that. When I see that you're able to say no when a friend invites you to do something you don't want to do. If I see that you can say no to that, that's a good indication that you are able to stick up for yourself. So you can have and I have this checklist in the book, 14 Talks, about becoming independent and what a kid needs to do, but understanding what are the behaviors I need to see before we move on to this next big milestone, that's helpful, instead of saying June 12th, 2026. That's arbitrary.
Right. Let's not pick a date. Let's pick a way of being together.
Yes.
Let's pick a way of being together. So parenting, as we all know, regardless of the age or stage or duration that it's in, it's unending, and the community that we surround ourselves with is really important. Otherwise, it can just be just a long. It can just be a long journey if you think you're the only one there. What are some kinds of conversations or ways that parents? I know you've done this in your work, and you gather with parents as well. That that families or faith communities can gather together and support one another in the kind of journey that we're talking about.
The biggest thing that we can do as communities is speak very openly and very honestly about a commitment not to judge other people's kids. It happens no matter where you are. I hear parents say it all the time. My kid wants to hang out with this other kid, and I don't know if it's a good fit. I don't know if they're a good friend, And you can have these concerns, but if they turn into rumblings in the community about who's a good kid and who's a bad kid, and who's a risky kid and who's not who's a safe kid to be around, that becomes dangerous for everyone. You don't want your kids to have to go behind your back to hang out with someone. You don't want any parent to feel like they can't talk to other parents about what they're experiencing, that they're so isolated. And I've had so many parents say to me, as soon as I broke the ice and I said, I think my daughter is having some eating difficulties, or I think my son is, he's using Zins, and I think it's going to turn into something bigger, and it's moving too fast. Or I am worried about my son's search history online. As soon as, you don't have to go broadcasting this stuff, but as soon as you confide in one or two other parents, you will be amazed at the trust that you build and the way people come together and say, yeah, maybe not me, but I know someone you should talk to. And so breaking down those barriers and saying, we're not going to judge a kid for having an experience. This is how you persevere. If you get stuck in the muck and the shame and the guilt as a parent or a child, in an inevitable mistake. That's what you have to do to grow up. You have to make a bunch of mistakes and then say, oh, I didn't like the way that felt. I'm going to pick a different path next time. But if we don't talk about that in some way as a community, without really exposing our children and putting all of their stuff out there, but really just saying, I'm struggling and I need a little support. If we don't do that, we get stuck in those cycles of shame. So, to have some kind of a pact with each other, I'm not going to judge you. If you tell me something that you're going through with your child, I promise you my response will be, it could be anyone. It could be me. What can I do for you?
You write about failure being a necessary teacher.
Right.
Say more about that.
So we tend to think of failure in a very kind of meme-y way, like Michael Jordan got cut from his basketball team, right? And so we think about it in a cliched kind of, what's the best story we have about somebody who overcame a failure? In reality, a rite of passage, which is how we usher kids across the threshold from childhood to adulthood, a rite of passage contains 3 steps, one of which is your kid separates, they individuate, they go off on their own, they make a decision because they're off on their own, and it's a bad one. And then they learn from that decision. They grow from that decision. They become a better person, and they reintegrate into the community. So we know that this is what growing up looks like. Pulling apart, something bad happens, you learn from that, and then you reintegrate. It's better for the community, because now you're someone who's learned, oh, it did not feel good to make fun of someone in public. It did not feel good to not get into the college I assumed I would go to because my older sibling goes there. It didn't feel good to drink at a party and have everyone mad at me the next day because I got us in trouble. When you do that, when you have that experience as a young person, if the adult reaction to that mess up is, I need to teach this kid a lesson, if that's your reaction to that, your kid will not learn a lesson because they will be thinking about how to respond to you defensively. if you can pause and let them sit in that feeling of despair, I really screwed up here, and just let them soak that discomfort in, they will come to the conclusion that they don't like how that feels. But if you're putting on a big production, they're distracted from that feeling, and they're thinking of how to respond to you and get you off their back. So you let them feel that failure, and then you say, that was really hard. I saw you struggling through there. I'm here for you. Let's talk about what you can do to repair this. And you move on from there.
So give me an example of a corollary to that with slightly younger kids.
Okay. So let's say you have, what's slightly younger? What's an age range? 5th grade, 4th grade, 3rd grade?
Let's go 3rd grade.
Okay. So let's say you have a 3rd grader and they, I'm trying to think of what's a failure for a 3rd grader. Let's say you're.
Should we poll the audience? We can poll the
Who wants to share with your community?
some people are like jumping out of their chairs right now. I have one. I got one.
I mean, I think most failures at a 3rd grade level are impulsivity related, probably. So let's say you have a kid who's at school and, oh my gosh, I'm making this up, but let's say that they're doing an art project and it comes to your attention that your 3rd grader vandalized another kid's art project. So they saw that somebody else's lighthouse was really spectacular and had a working light switch, and they tugged on that and pulled the light out of the light switch. Maybe at first out of curiosity, maybe eventually out of like, I'm sort of mad that this kid thought of this and I didn't think of this, right? So that would be deeply upsetting to you as a parent if the teacher said, I have to tell you, your kid ruined this other kid's lighthouse project. Is that a 4th grade thing in public school? I don't know, but let's pretend it's a 3rd grade thing. Okay, what do you do, right? So I think of these things as a 3-step response, and I want you to picture a tennis match. So the first part is contain. You see the issue. You have to contain it. You can't just let it go. Oftentimes containing the issue is marking it, just saying with words, hey, we need to talk. I heard this. Would you like to tell me about what happened, right? So you're containing it by just saying, we're not gonna ignore it, we're not gonna let it go and grow, we're gonna talk about it. The next step, so contain is the ball's on your side of the court. The ball bounces to the kid's side of the court. The kid has to do something to resolve this. And that means taking some kind of action. And in this case, it certainly would be an apology would be appropriate. You know, they might have to replace a part. They might have to offer to fix it. There are many things that you can do. And so you talk with the kid and you say, the ball's in your court now. You've got to do something. What would you like to do? I can help you think of some things, or you can give me some ideas. And then your kid goes and does that thing, and you can't do the thing. You don't apologize for what your kid did. The kid has to take action. If they don't, this is again where your child starts to internalize, I'm the type of kid who isn't really good at school, gets a big laugh when I do something destructive, you know, whatever it might be, and they get stuck in that. So you don't want that to happen. So you say, take action. Action is the only thing that can break this cycle. So they do that, and the ball bounces back to your side of the court, and the last thing you do, so you contained it, they resolved it, your job is to evolve. And that means you don't keep talking about it. You don't press the bruise. You don't make sure they learned their lesson. You say, that was tough. You did something that was hard to manage. You did something to make it better. I'm proud of you for that. And I'm not going to bring it up again, but if you want to talk about it, I'm here anytime. And you move right along.
So I don't know if you all feel this or recognize this, but you know we do this every single Sunday at church. Do y'all recognize this? We have this little part of the service where we gather and we're all together, and then the clergy person stands up and says, let us confess our sins against God and our neighbors, right? And it's sort of a thing that we then say out loud, and then there's an absolution that's pronounced, and then we kind of move on from there. We try to embody in the midst of our liturgical practice on a weekly basis, except for on special days and during Easter, what it looks like for us to live a life of failing, of being reconciled for things that we've done or left undone, and then setting ourselves on the right path in order to be able to come to the altar to receive communion, in order to go back out into the world and to operate in a different way. Right?
That is such a wonderful parallel. And imagine if you kept poking at that bruise. People wouldn't come back. They would not come back every week. And so you cannot, when your child messes up, if you want perseverance, and you have to do the same thing for yourself, you cannot continue to poke the bruise. You have to say, that was hard. You did something really hard too by making it better. And on we move. That's really great.
So we didn't, we started here, we went younger. I'm going to try something. Let's see if this works.
Let's do it.
We have a lot of grandparents
Oh, yeah.
in the room right now. Give me a corollary to a grandparent watching a child parent. Okay?
Yes.
And because that's a whole new dynamic, right? And child wanting to make the decisions as parents, and grandparents interacting in that sort of cycle there. Give me an example.
Well, I'm going to start by saying that my daughter is 25, and she's going to be engaged at some point. She's very open. She and her partner are very open about this, and he. She said to me, Jacob asked how much you're going to be involved with raising our kids. Because it's like, oh, I'm going to be marrying a woman whose mother is a parenting person. Like, So I am coming at this from a very personal level. Sit back and detach. I recognize everything has changed since I was parenting a 2 and a 4 and a 5, right? Even a teenager. So if you are a grandparent, I think your job is to be the ally to the grandchild in service to whatever the parent is trying to achieve. And to illustrate that, there's this viral prank that's going around on TikTok or on Reels, if you've seen it. And it's where the parent has the kid call the grandparent and say, hey, can I talk to you? I need you to sign my math test. I got a 40 and I can't show my parents. They're gonna get really upset. So can you sign it for me? And most of the time, the grandparents knock it out of the park, and it's the sweetest thing ever to see the kid on the phone with the grandparent, and the grandparent will say, well, they're on speakerphone, but the grandparent will say like, well, I think we need to tell your parents, but you know what? I'm gonna come over and I'll be there when you tell them. And it's the sweetest response. So you are an ally to the grandchild in service to what the parent needs, your own child needs to be a better parent. And they don't need you to be a secret keeper, and they don't need you to do things behind their back, but to be one more person who really loves that kid well and openly and honestly and says, I'll come over and I'll stand there next to you. You have something hard to tell your parents, but we got to tell your parents. I'm not going to keep this a secret. So I think that's a good metaphor for what grandparents need to be.
I love it. I love it. So if perseverance is about showing up again and again and again, creating the right relational container, right,
Yeah.
to contain and resolve and evolve, what does that look like for parents who are just exhausted?
Oh, yeah. What that looks like is doing less. I know you're exhausted. And you could be doing nothing and still be exhausted. It's exhausting to raise a human being. And probably you're not doing nothing. Probably you're trying to exercise and you have a job and you're volunteering and you're, maintaining the happiness of the people around you. But I think it depends on why you're exhausted. For me, a thing that exhausts me is I take on everyone's emotions in my family. I am a sponge. And I spend a lot of time trying to be sure that this kid isn't mad at their dad and that my husband, their dad is my husband, that my son isn't mad at my husband over some, an argument they had this morning. I'm like constantly taking the temperature. And is my daughter irritated that my son didn't text her back? And you have to give that up. That's exhausting. So you have to just believe people when they tell you how they feel in your family. I think that's a good way. I think the calendaring, I think looking at your calendar and saying, what can we slice off of this? And that's going to be really hard to do because someone in your family will care. Your husband will say, oh, it's so important for him to be on a team. It's so important that he learns how to be a good sport and how to play well with others. But maybe your kid doesn't want to be on the team, right? So you have to evaluate how you're going to manage your time, how you're going to manage your emotions. And the most important advice I give to every parent whose kid is going into middle school, so a little bit older, start earlier if you can, is you have to get a hobby. Your child cannot be your hobby. Parenting cannot be your hobby. You have to show your child that you have interests and activities outside of them. Because if they feel that they are your primary interest, they will believe that how they perform socially and academically are important to your happiness. And that is dangerous territory. So you want them to see you being happy and fulfilled and recharged outside of your role as a parent.
We're back to that, how we care.
Yeah,
thing
how we
again,
care.
aren't we?
Right. Yeah. I am auditioning a version of that as the title for my next book. It's Careless Parenting. And I really think there's so much noise out there. There's so many people saying, you ought to care about this, you ought to care about that. And we get it through podcasts and social media and our neighbors and the PTA and friends and news articles. It's too much noise. And I think we need to care a little less about a lot.
It strikes me that in a place like Christchurch where our lives can kind of intersect with one another at various, on Sundays or in the community around that, really being able to have that support network with others who we, as you mentioned earlier, can just call and say, I need somebody to chat with. It's just part of the secret sauce of making it through, making it through the parenting years. It also strikes me that there's a general exhaustion in the world right now as a result of all that is going on that we know about all the time. The 24-hour news cycle was a wonderful invention 30 years ago. And I think we're 30 years into the experiment of always being online and of knowing everything that's happening in the world, whether you can do anything about it or not. I wonder if you would speak a little bit about how it is that we as parents and families, being aware that all that is going on all the time, can continue to provide the right amount of support for our kids when they hear things said or when they learn about things that are happening, or if we have teens that have phones with TikTok and all the other things on them, and they're receiving the images and the messaging in whatever forms they're doing. How can we as parents and families really ground ourselves in the midst of the noise that is all around us?
Well, we can't anticipate what our kids will come across in the world, in person or online. And I don't want anyone, this is the premise really of the Careless Parenting. When my kids were playing softball and baseball when they were young, my daughter was on this great softball team, and the coach would yell to the girls who were not paying attention in the outfield, which was every girl every time. When somebody would walk up to bat, look alive, ladies, something's about to happen. Every single time. Something's about to happen. And I think about that, and my husband yelling to my son, bend your knees, like, get baseball ready, something's about to happen, right? You have to be poised for action. I don't want you careening around the field, anticipating what your child might see or come across in the world out there. Just know something's about to happen. You can't possibly know what it is. So if you are the type of parent who's frantically trying to anticipate, and you're like, oh, it might get hit to third, and so you race to third instead of covering your own area, that is exhausting, And it's not useful to you or your child to parent with that strategy of anticipating everything. So instead, I think the way that you stay grounded through the possibility, keep the word poised in mind. Poised means you are ready, you are alert, and you are balanced. So you're like bent knees, baseball ready, something might happen, I'm keeping my eyes open, but I'm not freaking out. Then, if you discover, oh, something has happened, my child has seen something, my child has come across something that is upsetting or violent or disconcerting or whatever it might be, then you have a conversation about how that feels and you kind of process it. And I know that there are, of course, some things you can do to be preventative. There's a little bit you can do to be preventative, but truly, kids are going to share things with each other. So even if you're a family who says, my kid doesn't have access to TikTok at home, they could certainly have somebody whip their phone around and show them something, right? So what you want to do is talk about how these things make you feel. And with technology in particular, even if your child just looks at technology from time to time, and I'm not opposed to this at all, I think you want to start cluing your kid into what are their internal clues that this doesn't feel good anymore. So talk with your kids about, this is so basic, but like, is there a time when you're scrolling through your phone or when you're texting with people when you can start to feel like your eyes get a little dry? Is there a time when you're scrolling through your phone and you are getting bored, but you think like the next thing might be funny? Is there a time when you're scrolling through your phone and you realize you haven't had water in a couple hours? If you really think about these things, and these are all me, I'm like adding myself about these because I get lost in looking for the next dopamine hit. But we have to start cluing kids into their own internal barometers for how these external forces make them feel. Do you see anything when you're scrolling that sometimes kind of gives you a little bit of a stomach ache, makes you feel a little ugh? And you don't have to tell me what it is. I don't need to know that. I just need to know, is your internal mechanism working for you? And are you listening to it? Or do you get that feeling, the dry eyes, the yuck, the boredom, the whatever, and you keep going? I want you to tune into when you feel those things and know this is an indication that I need a little break. I'm not going to take the phone away. I'm not going to monitor 15 minutes and the timer goes off. I want you to start to develop your internal skills for when this makes you feel bad and to know this means I have to take a little break. I have to put it away.
Strikes me that would also be a good conversation for couples to have.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. We
Yeah.
spend a lot of time in the world, both because personal lives, some people still have two phones, personal lives and business lives are together. I was with a guy the other day and he said he needed to check his phone for something, and we were doing something recreational, and he reached and grabbed his phone and looked at it, and he's like, I should never look at my phone when I'm doing something recreational because all the stuff that I did not need to think about came rushing right back into me at the same time. This notion of feeling poised reminds me of really what I think we're about here at Christ Church. You may hear these three words all the time. You may hear us talk about faith and connection and well-being. These are three mantras, three words that we're constantly using. And it's not just by happenstance, right? It's because we believe and we know that if people can have an experience of God and an experience of faith with one another in community, that we really can be grounded in the reality of God and of God's love in a world that doesn't always speak very loudly of what's going on. We talk about community because we recognize that life cannot be done in isolation from others, and that there really is a reality to having people that you see on a regular basis be able to be there for you, so that when things get askewed, you can ground yourself. And then that word well-being for us is not just about how mentally am I feeling, but really about how am I attending to, I love this idea of a hobby, right?
Yeah.
A hobby outside of your children. How is it that I am allowing myself to scan and to pay attention to what my mind and my heart and my body and my soul are feeling in the world in which I live, so that when the swirl happens, so that, because it's going to happen, so that when I mess up, so that when someone else needs me to attend to something that they didn't know was coming and I didn't know was coming, but they need me in my most grounded state, that I'm able to be there. Your word poise reminds me of the way in which that's just a core part of why we're here. And I say that out loud, hoping that that we as a community can continue to find that sense of groundedness in the space that we're in. I wonder, as we're getting ready to wrap up here, if you could give a perseverance mantra.
Yes.
A perseverance mantra for those who have kids that are toddlers. What would a perseverance mantra be?
Perseverance needs sleep. And it sounds funny, but like, you need to sleep as a parent. You cannot sacrifice your sleep for your child.
Okay, so sleep.
Sleep.
Yeah.
I think
good.
that for toddlers, that's key.
Okay. What would a perseverance mantra for those with elementary aged kids be?
I would say for elementary age parents, practice being brave, because your child is practicing being brave, but you have to practice being brave. And that means letting them do things that make you uncomfortable, going to school in an outfit that you think is hideous. Risky play is really important for kids that age, being able to take some risks while they're playing, making a mess. Be brave about these things, because that is an excellent platform for having a middle schooler, which comes next.
All right,
Yeah.
and what's a perseverance?
Oh, that's get a hobby. Get
Yeah.
a hobby is middle school.
Get a hobby,
That is
okay.
seriously the point. When your child begins to pull away from you very purposefully, if they don't know it or recognize it, they are doing it intentionally, even if they don't know it. And so they need to see that you have interests outside of them.
All right, high schoolers.
Connection, not outcome. Prioritize connection over outcome. That is hard in high school, because all you think about are outcomes. You're thinking about college, you're thinking about grades, you're thinking about friendships, you're thinking about first love, you're thinking about all of these things that are really big and could have lasting effects. The only way you get through those things well and you ensure that the lasting effects aren't damaging is by having a connection.
College.
Stay available, not in charge. Yeah, let them do things on their own, but you're available. You're a consultant.
All right, and then what about parents of parents?
Parents of parents. I don't have one on the tip of my tongue for this, so I will say that it is be an ally. Again, it's not being in control, it's not being in charge, but you are a strong ally.
Awesome. Michelle, I want to thank you for being here
you.
with us today and for being a conversation partner with us. We are hopeful and looking forward to you being able to continue to be a conversation partner
Yeah.
with us at Christ Church through the Center for Wellbeing and Care, as we continue to look at how we can make this journey in parenting and faith together. And so thank you so much for your time. And
Thank you. Thanks
for
to
being here.
everyone. Yeah. Thank you all.
3 words: faith, connection, well-being. No matter what you are facing on your journey as an individual or as families, we as a community of faith are here for you, and we always will be. And our prayer is that you will continue to be there for one another in all the ways that we need it, so that we can make the long journey of love together and continue to see our kids and our grandkids and generation to generation to come grow up knowing that, that they are loved and that they have a place to call home. Amen.
Amen.